Hello once again. I think I mentioned at the last video of unconditional surrender what may be on the table next, and I mentioned downfall, and sure enough that's on the table. Didn't take very long to assimilate the rules. I mean, they're sort of 30 odd pages, I think, a bit more in terms of page number, but if you exclude some of the examples of play and a very useful index, it's about 36 pages. Lots of graphics within the text, and it's a fairly easy read. Follows quite a logical flow as well, which is makes the understanding of the rules quite straightforward. And also, at the same time, I'm playing this with a friend of mine, Rob. We're doing it on Vassal. There's a very nice Vassal module which has been done for this game, which is quite smart, and in some ways it's almost easier to play because you've got the ability to reduce or increase the unit strengths graphically rather than having to rotate the counters. And I found once or twice I've nudged a stack, not that stacks are that big, but I mean you get maybe too high over a few hex line, and you sort of nudge one of them and think, oh, was that on one or was it on two pips? Whereas of course the Vassal module allows you just to change the number of active pips, which is a nice feature. So it's very different to unconditional surrender, partly because it's just 1942. It's you don't really do the first couple of years of the war at all. There was talk about maybe doing an edition that might take the gameplay back to Barbarossa. I could see that would be feasible. I can't see any way you could go back to 39 with all and bring in diplomatic rules, and it would change far too much from the system. But as it is, it seems to work well with its within the sort of parameters of what it's trying to do. Very abstract naval and air system, which I think is fine. I think even in the later scenarios, the Overlord scenario, you don't even use the naval assets. But there's the concept of strategic warfare, and there are three boxes: the air war, the Battle of the Atlantic, and the Siege of Malta tables, which is a nice sort of top-down view of the effect of those three elements in the flow of the campaign. It's got a very unique system. I mean, you actually, for those who don't know, you essentially have a draw cup of orders, and you're playing the Western Allies and OKH on the Eastern Front as one player, and then OKW on the Western Front, and the Russians as the other player. So the kind of Wallies are trying to hold back the Russians, and at the same time invading the West, and vice versa for the Russian player. So that's quite a unique feel for a game. Two-player, yes, definitely. Solo works fine. Could you do it with more than two? I don't see why not. You could do it four-player. Might be a nice way to learn the system. So essentially you're drawing these orders out of a cup, and you put them on an action track, and then the person with the initiative gets to pick one from the action track, and the cost is paid in initiative, and you can do little things for little cost, and major operations cost you a lot more initiative. And there's a nice method where you draw events when you advance along the initiative track over your particular icon. The weather also tracks along the main track on the outside of the board, and it's an 8-turn game with essentially 3. I don't want to call them seasons because they're not seasons, because a turn is there's 8 turns spread over the 3 years. So but there's essentially 3 weather periods on each turn, and the weather has a big effect on the play. So it's either going to be mud, it's going to be fair, or it's going to be snow, and that has big effects on the combat. So it's very interesting, very different, very innovative system. I believe it was a concept from Chad Jensen, was the original designer, who sadly passed away far too young, and then I think John Butterfield picked it up and did a good job, because apparently nothing was really written down, it was all in Chad's head, and he managed to interpret what he saw from the physical components, and was able to create what we have today, which is a major achievement. The card play is interesting. Both sides get to draw essentially action cards, which give them benefits in combat and allow them to do other things, additional replacements, or adding strength to combat. So, I mean, it's too early to call whether I think this is a truly fantastic game that's going to rival for table space with things like Unconditional Surrender. But I like what I see so far. It's not a quick game, I'd say. I don't think you're going to get this to the table and get through it in a day, or maybe a day and a bit. I think for the full campaign, I think you're looking at a long weekend once players know what they're doing. It's surprisingly lengthy. I'm just about to finish turn 2, so, and I'd like to get through, certainly to see how amphibious invasions are conducted. So the Allies have ejected the Axis from Africa, so they're now sat in Tunis, staring at Sicily, and they've built up. You have to build up your amphibious invasion fleet by taking strategic warfare actions. So that gives you the ability to invade certain beaches. So I want to see how that works out. That could be quite tricky. The OKW were able to evacuate Panzer Army Africa out of Tunis, not unscathed, but in the game, the other thing which you have to remember is that dead units remain dead. They don't come back. So we had an occasion on the Vassal game where I had a fairly weak Axis minor unit stacked with a panzer unit, which got clobbered with a 4 loss result, and you can take half of those in retreat. So there's no rule that says that you must divide your losses evenly. So I could take the 2 on the Axis minor, which felt a bit strange, and there were a few complaints from the gallery that, oh, that's a bit gamey, surely the Germans would be taking some of the hits. And definitely allowed by the rules, as far as I can see. But on reflection, you've actually lost a unit out of the game which can't come back. And I suspect that there might be a bit of payback for not having that unit helping to form a line somewhere. So maybe it would have been better to have had a 1-step loss on each, and keeping the cardboard on the map. I'll show you the map anyway and give you some idea of the graphics. It's quite a pleasant thing to look at, and let's see what you think. Okay, so that's the sort of, the light's not great today, but I don't want to put on the overhead light because it will get too much glare off the perspex. But you get some idea of the size of the map. So around the outside of the map we've got the initiative track, and these are the eight game turns with the reinforcements that arrive, go into the pending box when called up. So nothing much happening obviously in France at the moment. Some partisans have arrived, and the action's really been in the Mediterranean. As I say, the Axis forces are no longer in Africa. There's competing air. One of the things you have to get used to is the way the air works in the game. It's a bit like having a subs bench in sport. Units are coming on and off the bench as the events roll over. So the events being here, you tot up the number of visible air, and that's the number of units that are currently available for operations. And as these events roll over, these get covered up and the air come off, and you get a new event which will be placed over here as the pending event, and that might reveal new air units. Eastern Front, there's been quite a bit. I think Stalino's changed hands about 2 or 3 times. The Russians starting to get some traction, but definitely some options for OKH that I can see. And these are the order tracks. So you're taking an order off here, off the action track, and you're placing it when it's your turn onto the orders, and that's the initiative cost, which advances your marker on the initiative track. And when the weather marker, which is currently here, and that runs off the end, that's the end of the turn. So it's a very quick overview. I like what I see so far. Look forward to continuing the Vassal game with Rob and pushing on a bit more solo.